All right, looks like we are live on Facebook. Okay, we got.
There's Craig.
Yeah, okay. Oh, let me turn this off here. Hey, everybody who's out there. Oh, we got a bunch of people on Facebook watching already. Okay. Well, hello to you all. We'll give everyone a moment. Let me grab my my other Google Doc here that has all our stuff. All right. Cancel this. Okay. Let's see. There we go. All right, got that. All right, I think we should be good. Hey, Stephanie, and I see Alan and some others are joining us as well. I'm only looking at the Facebook feed. I know that we have people also watching on YouTube and on our website. So if you have any comments or questions, if you will feed them into the Facebook feed, or you could join us on the actual Zoom. That will be great. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. We're so glad to have James here. Yay.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Rabbi.
Yeah, we'll officially welcome you in just a moment. All right, let me see real quickly. I'm just going to mute myself for 1 second, and I'll be right back. All right. Hello, Shalom. We got on YouTube over on this screen. Let's let in these folks. All right. Hey, everyone who's just coming on in here. Shalom. Glad to see you. Hey, Pam. Hello. All right. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. All right. I'm just going to get this on. Go to our YouTube channel and make sure that's there. That I can pick up any comments. All right. We do. Get here. There we go. All right, here is Rabbi Lynette. Hey, Sandy, nice to see you too. Hello, hello. And there's Rabbi from next door.
Hello from next door.
Hello, I can hear you through the wall. Oh, man. All right. Hey, Marcio.
Hi, Rabbi Benji, Shana Tova.
Tova, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Hello. Well, we got people watching in 4 locations. We got people on here. We got people on Zoom. We got a couple people on YouTube. We got a bunch of people on Facebook. And got some people on our website also. So we get a variety of ways to tune in and see James Pasch over here, and we are thrilled to welcome him. And I think we'll probably get started because I know that James's time is limited, and we want to make sure that we get every moment that we can with this wonderful human here. So I want to say that we are officially now, we're thrilled to welcome back to Temple Beth Shalom, James Pasch, the regional director of the ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League. James has been working in this position. Is this your third year in the position?
It is. Yeah, going on year 3.
Going on year 3, and has been a constant voice, a supportive voice for combating anti-Semitism in our area, around the region and throughout the country. He started a lot of new educational programs, working with a great team, has worked hard to reach out to communities in our region to make connections. And he's just, as I said, an all-around great guy. And we're glad to have him in our corner fighting hate as it arises. Our ADL district includes Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Western Pennsylvania. Tell me if I missed any. It's certainly a large and diverse area to cover. Mr. Pasch comes to the ADL from Case Western University before this, where he was the Assistant Dean of Development of Public Affairs. And he is currently the council president of the Beechwood City Council until December 31st, at which point he is, I think, ready to shake off the yoke of that public service specifically. Maybe he'll share a couple of crazy stories from that. But just to mention that James is also a graduate of the University of Vermont and Case Western Reserve University School of Law. So Rabbi Lynette and I, and all those who are gathered here on Facebook and on Zoom and YouTube, are really excited to welcome you back, James. And we are I know that it's not quite as great having you on Zoom as it would be to have you in person, but it's really hot out there in the parking lot, so it's nice to come in for a few moments of air conditioning. And we're just really glad to be able to be with you and to learn from you today. So thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Rabbi Benji and Rabbi Lynette. It is an honor to be here. Does everyone hear me? So, yeah. It's just a real honor to be on the Zoom Bima, Facebook Bima, YouTube Bima. But I really miss being in person. There was a brief moment in time this summer, Rabbi, when you reached out, where I think we all thought we would be back to normal this fall. And in the interim, and I'm sure we'll get back there eventually, I really hope that everyone who's listening, that you and your loved ones stay safe and stay well. Wishing you nothing but the best this new year. And I as I was telling kind of Rabbi before we started this afternoon, a couple of years ago, when I was at the synagogue, it had only been a few months since I had started as the director of ADL, and I gave kind of more of a free-form speech and a Q&A. And what I wanted to do today was, I actually I created a PowerPoint for you guys so that I could talk to you a little bit more in depth about the state of anti-Semitism and hate, both in Ohio and across the country, the trends that we're seeing in our region, and how can we as members of the public, as leaders in our community, counter that rise of anti-Semitism and hate, because I don't think, even before I show you the charts and graphs, I don't think that you need to see the charts and the graphs to understand that there's been a rise. I think we all feel it in our everyday lives. We see it with our own eyes. We hear it with our own ears. And so we know that we're not in a great place when it comes to the state of anti-Semitism and hate in Ohio. I'm going to, if you bear with me, I'm going to share my computer screen with everyone. So All right. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is the current state of hate and anti-Semitism. And before I go further, I don't want to take for granted that everyone knows what the ADL does and what our mission is. We have the same mission today that we have had since 1913, which is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment to all. The second part of that mission being equally as important as the first part of that mission, because if we don't fight back against hate for all people, then it's a battle that we need to win together, no matter who you are, no matter what corner of the globe you live in. Hate is unacceptable, and we're either going to rise together or we're going to fall together. And just to take a snapshot about what we do at ADL and kind of what we do every day is we fight anti-Semitism, we fight extremism, and we fight discrimination. Rabbi Benji touched on this. One of the ways we do that is to build hope through our education programs. One of those education programs is called No Place for Hate in our K through 12 schools. I will talk a lot more about that later on today, because it's something that we've really doubled down on. When I became the director of the ADL a few years ago, we were in roughly 20 schools in our region. We are now in 60, and that's going to continue to increase year after year. And we're constantly fighting against hate crimes. We actually started a pro bono hate crimes litigation pilot here in Ohio, which led to a hate crimes conviction this past year in Columbus. We run education for law enforcement on hate crimes and extremism, and we advocate for legislation such as the Equality Act right now in Congress. A lot of people ask, what exactly is it that we do? And this first bubble here, we investigate all incidents that are reported to our office. I know that Rabbi Benji talked about this in his sermon on Rosh Hashanah, where we have a place on our website to report incidents. That's important for a couple of different reasons. One, it allows us to track and monitor trends, but it also allows us to work directly with law enforcement if and when there is a hate crime on the behalf of individuals, and we do that on a regular basis. We also form coalitions across the state of Ohio, from the NAACP to the Urban League, to lobby for civil rights for all groups of individuals. People ask, what is the entire repertoire of things that you work on? And you can see right here, it could be voting rights, it could be immigration rights, it could be free speech issues. To us, it goes back to the entire second prong of the mission of fighting for justice for all. When it comes to education, I always say hate is a learned behavior. No one is born with it. And just as easily as hate could be learned, it could be unlearned. And so the sooner we are able to get inside of schools and classrooms, the larger impact that we have, which is why we start in kindergarten with our No Place for Hate program. But we run, what's so unique about it is it's a student-driven program. So schools set up committees that have students, administrators, teachers, parents, and throughout the calendar year, with the assistance of our office, they run school-wide programs that deal with areas of bias, areas of hate, and they involve the entire school community in those projects. And then at the end of the school calendar year, there's usually a ceremony that takes place where they are provided a No Place for Hate designation. Students take a lot of pride in hanging a No Place for Hate banner in their schools and in their hallways. And it really becomes part of the culture of school districts. breeds tolerance and acceptance. We also run large anti-bias programs for teachers and administrators. And really the hope of all of this is to bring together diverse communities so that we better understand one another. I know that everyone in this audience probably knows what anti-Semitism is. Really, it's just prejudice or discrimination that's directed towards Jews for us being Jews. We kind of know it when we see it, but not everyone else does. And we're going to get into some examples kind of later on to talk about how we fight back against anti-Semitism. So this is kind of the most frequent question I get, which is, are we really seeing a spike? I mean, the answer to that is clearly yes. 2020 and 2019 are our two highest years on record since we started tracking anti-Semitic incidents in the United States. And you can see even if it's plateaued, there's no signs of it going down. And I could tell you that in 2021, our numbers are not decreasing. What's also relatively shocking about the 2020 numbers is we were all at home. One of the things that occurred is as we moved to a virtual world, anti-Semitism and hate just adopted to that nexus, right? Which is where we saw the advent of Zoom bombing. And that takes us to this, right? I mean, no one even knew what Zoom bombing was. Very few of us even knew what Zoom was, prior to the pandemic starting. And when you look at it, you're looking at 58% of all Zoom bombing incidents in 2020 specifically targeted Jewish institutions. 114 Jewish institutions, and that's just what's reported to us. And so I think that should give everybody a flare of kind of how anti-Semitism always adopts and molds to whatever nexus it, quote, needs to in order to spread its message. It doesn't go away, it just adopts.
Hey, James, can I just throw a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
A clarifying question about what Zoom bombing actually is.
Yeah, so Zoom bombing is kind of like we're on this Zoom right now. If somebody were to pop up on the screen and start shouting or yelling or sharing graphics that are anti-Semitic, there have been shivas that have been interrupted by people hacking into people's Zooms and doing the Hail Hitler or showing their screen with anti-Semitic symbols. And so that's what Zoom bombing is. It's somebody who is not invited to a particular Zoom, joins the Zoom, and then immediately interrupts or disrupts the Zoom in order to do something that is anti-Semitic or hate-driven. It's become, unfortunately, a rather common phenomenon. And we have had everything from baby namings to shivas to Torah readings interrupted by anti-Semitic Zoom bombing incidents in the past year and a half. Rabbi, any more questions on that?
No, nothing. That I think that clarifies that. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to give everyone kind of a snapshot too of kind of state by state. You'll see two of the states that we cover in our region, have some of the highest amount of incidents of anti-Semitism in both Pennsylvania and Ohio, but this kind of gives you a brief snapshot. And once again, the 2,024 total incidents in 2020, those are just the incidents reported to our office that are a part of our anti-Semitic audit. And obviously we know that this number is higher. when we look at our region specifically, I think this is really an eye-popping graph for people to look at. I mean, and before 2016, you saw numbers that were in the single digits a lot of years. We are now at 77 with no sign of it slowing. 2020 saw both the highest amount of incidents in our region and the highest increase in percentage that we've ever had. We had a 77% increase in Ohio specifically. We had a 600% increase in the state of Kentucky. And so, we are seeing a significant and noticeable uptick. We track, just so everyone is aware, when we're talking about anti-Semitic incidents, we track incidents of harassment, vandalism, assault. Those are the main categories that we look into. We also did a survey this past year, to see if people were experiencing anti-Semitism in their everyday lives, right? And 63% of us have experienced or witnessed some form of an anti-Semitic incident. And 56% have heard an anti-Semitic comment or slur. So these are all, pretty significant statistics when we're talking about well over half of the community. And this is something that Rabbi Benji talked about in his Rosh Hashanah sermon as well, which is the increase of anti-Semitic incidents that we saw across the country during the conflict this past summer in the Mideast. And we saw a dramatic rise of anti-Semitic incidents across the country. I think we're going to see some of that continue to boil over in our college campuses this fall. So it's always important to keep an eye when we see a 75% increase in anti-Semitic incidents. One of the things that we have continued to see is hate spread around the coronavirus. We have seen it obviously most prominently in the Asian American community, with our Asian counterparts being shamefully and needlessly blamed for the spread of a virus. And we have also now seen Jewish individuals being blamed. I've had incidents in schools with students referring to it as the Jew flu. We now have school board meetings throughout Ohio and this country that are continuing to lead to parents and community members comparing health measures to keep people safe to Nazi Germany. It has happened most recently this past week in Worthington, right in your backyard, with community members standing up and giving the Nazi salute to school board member in New Albany, making comparisons to the Holocaust. And I feel like I sound like a broken record when I say this, because for some reason I have to keep saying it, which is there is obviously no comparison between health measures to keep Americans safe and our children safe from a virus and the actions that took place in Nazi Germany. And every time an elected official or one of our leaders or one of our community members makes that comparison, it does a dishonor to the millions that were killed at the hands of the Nazis. And it has to stop. And when it's coming from our elected officials and our candidates, we must demand better. there is no place for that in our communities, and it truly has to stop. And so does the anti-Asian hate associated with the coronavirus. There is no place for that. We had a judge up in this part of Ohio who wrote a Bar Association newsletter where he continually referred to it as the China virus. And we had to publish a statement on that as well. Once again, there's no place for hate when it comes to fighting a global pandemic. There's no place for hate ever, but these comparisons are just outrageous, and it needs to stop. I've gone over most of this already, but we have 25 offices across the country, and this is mainly what we deal with. We also follow incidents of white supremacist propaganda and rallies, and we follow the trends of extremists. We've seen a massive rise of extremism in the United States and in Ohio, whether that is anti-militia groups or the Proud Boys. One of the areas we got involved is when we saw an increase in extremist activities last year. I was a part of an ADL team that briefed every large city mayor in the state of Ohio in the lead up to the election about what we were seeing on the ground. I also briefed Governor DeWine and his chief of staff and the safety director of the state of Ohio. As many people on this call have probably read about or were aware of, right? The plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan was planned in Dublin, and that continued rise of extremism and anti-government activity is something that we are very cognizant of and are working hard to combat. As people are also probably aware, this past week, the FBI reported their 2020 statistics on hate crimes, and their trends match what we're seeing in our statistics, which is no surprise, right? But we're looking between 2019 and 2020 in Ohio alone at a 41.5% increase of hate crimes that were reported or in the incident-based reporting system. And if those statistics are confirmed by the FBI, it would be the most amount of hate crimes that Ohio has reported to the federal government in the 30 years that the federal government has been tracking. So, two of the things that the ADL has done is we've set up a center on extremism to track these individuals and to track trends. And we've set up a Center of Technology and Society to work on the spread of hate online that we're seeing, the mass proliferation of hate on the internet that we are all so cognizant of. We've created something called the heat map that tracks these incidents, and this is available to the public, and you can zoom in and you can see where things are happening and the trends that we're seeing year in and year out. And people always ask, what do you do with education? Why do you spend the plurality of your time on it? And I always point to this pyramid of hate is what we call it. And I look at the baseline of where it says biased attitudes, right? And the key is how do we stop something at that purple block before it ever escalates past that, right? Because if you don't stop something, it continues to escalate. I'm always reminded of former ADL director who said, Auschwitz wasn't built with bricks, it was built with words. And what we try to do is cut hate off at that baseline when we're talking about words before it escalates to anything that's violent. Which brings me to how can you help? and what do we need you to do to fight back against all these trends that we're seeing. And some of this is once again what the rabbi so poignantly said in his Rosh Hashanah sermon, which is we need everybody to stand up and not be silent. And that is so crucial. And I don't just mean stand up publicly. I mean stand up in your own conversations, in your workplaces, with your family, with your friends. When somebody says something that they shouldn't say, sometimes it's even more uncomfortable to address it with somebody you're close to. But I think gone are the days where we could just sit silently by and not say anything. That would be a mistake. So we really need to stand up. We need to speak out against all forms of hate. And we need to share facts with people. And people need to know kind of the state of hate in this country. And we tend to, I don't know, live in a state now where facts are, or facts and opinions are being melded together. And we really need to just say, you know, here are the statistics. Here's what we're seeing. And behind these statistics are human lives. There are children. There are parents, there are grandparents. Between every incident of hate has a life behind it and a name. And we need to share those facts with people to get them to understand. And then, you know, what I wanted to do is to show some examples of the little things of when we're confronted with things that could lead into anti-Semitism and how we might be able to confront them in our everyday lives, right? So, you know, you're sitting there talking to a colleague, and that colleague says, well, that guy doesn't look Jewish, right? And it's important to not just, you know, you could say, you don't have to let it slide. You could say to that individual, you know, I know you mean well, but that comment's going to offend people, and it offended me. And you know, I think there's a way, you know, you assume that the intent is good, but you have to explain the impact on why it wasn't okay. You know, sometimes, you know, another strategy I always say is ask a question to their question, right? Kind of disarm them a little bit. So in this example, right, somebody says, you didn't borrow lunch money from me last week. Didn't you borrow lunch money from me last week as well? What are you, a Jew? And you just, you know, it's important to then look at them and say, what do you mean by that? I don't understand, right? Because I think too many of us would just say, well, yeah, in our head, well, that was unacceptable, and kind of shake our head and walk away. But what we really need to do is confront it. So whoever we are talking to stops that behavior. You know, another example that I've heard is, you know, you could cut somebody off before they even go down a road, right? So that they understand it's not okay. Right? You have to hear this joke. There were 4 Jews sitting on a bench, and then you just interrupt and say, let's not go down that path. Right? It's okay to speak up and to speak out, even in these small private settings. And as I said before, maybe most importantly, in these small private settings. You know, this is another one that, you know, I see often. You know, I'm sure that person online, he's just one of those pushy Jews from New York. You know, I think it's important to fight that narrative, right? To counter it. You know, I don't think that's a Jewish thing. A lot of people are pushy, right? Like, I think you need to, we need to fight back against the narratives that have been formed in people's heads and educate them that it's not okay to attach a group of people to something. And this is kind of one of the most common things that we've seen recently, especially in light of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. Jews don't care about this country. All they care about is Israel. Right? The dual loyalty, age-old anti-Semitic trope. And the question I have is, do you mean everyone who's Jewish, or are you speaking about someone specifically or someone in particular? Because this idea that Jews across the globe should be held accountable for an action that someone disagrees with taken by the Israeli government, right, is an age-old problem and something that we have to correct. So these are just kind of all examples of things that I've talked about, because this is when individuals talk to me, they say, I don't know how to approach it when I'm confronted with it. And so I wanted to kind of go through some strategies with everybody to say, hey, I think it's okay in these settings to really disarm some people. And there's a variety of ways in which you could do that. But the one way that I would implore everybody as we kind of start fresh this new year is use whatever strategy you're comfortable with, except silence. I think we can no longer afford silence. And so I ask everybody, in this new year to make an effort in doing our individual parts in combating anti-Jewish sentiment, anti-Jewish statements, even if it doesn't border yet into anti-Semitism. There's a way to cut it off and to explain things to people, especially family and friends. And then, Rabbi.
Can I just jump in for one second here? Hold on. Let me for 1 second. I just want to say I think you're right, and I think it's so hard for folks to know what to do in that moment. And I think these are great tools, and I think that they're really helpful. I wonder if maybe we can get a copy of those slides. That would be helpful for us to hand out to folks. And also, I was gonna say that if we have the ADL as a resource, I think I know you said it at the beginning, but also if folks know that they can report an incident to through your website to you guys, I think that also even that act is empowering.
Yeah, I agree, Rabbi. That actually brings me right to the next slide. This is great. I prefer kind of the interaction anyway. The other thing outside of just confronting it in our daily lives is reporting an incident. It's right on our website. What I always say is when you come across an incident, document the incident, take a photo if you can, report the incident to appropriate authorities, and complete our incident report form. Our form will have areas where you could attach those photos, give a description. Someone from our office will then get in touch with you so that we can work on it together to fill in any loose ends that we didn't get on the incident report form. And then, depending on the incident, we'll either work directly with law enforcement, we'll work sometimes with a place of business that's been vandalized, or whatever the incident response calls for is what we'll do. Sometimes it will lead to a meeting with a superintendent and a school principal based on something that happened in a classroom, and there'll be a private meeting, and that private meeting will then turn into an anti-bias training for staff and for teachers. And so it really depends on what the incident is, but we will work with you from the moment you report that incident to our office. We have a great group of staff from from directors to lawyers and civil rights activists who are all part of the ADL staff that all get to work on what to do when an incident occurs. And it always kind of leads to us working with people on the ground and forming stronger bonds. And so outside of just tracking statistics, which is also important, it allows us to do the community work that is necessary to solve the root of the problem. So I encourage you all to report incidents wherever and whenever you see them. And like I said, not just anti-Semitic incidents. We work on all incidents of hate that occur, and we respond to them with equal levels of importance. And then, if anyone has any questions for me ever, I wanted to provide my direct email address to everybody at jpasch@adl.org. And feel free to contact me directly if there's anything that you ever need from the ADL. One of the things I've tried to do is to create and launch new programs where I see a need. And so, as I touched on earlier, we created a pro bono litigation pilot for victims of hate crimes in the state of Ohio to get them in the hands of the right attorneys to provide free legal services if individuals are a victim of hate crime. And so that is certainly one area where if you know anybody who's in need of pro bono legal assistance, please refer them to our office so that we can get them in the hands of the right attorney to handle that. The other thing I talked about is doubling and tripling down on education. We are in a lot of schools across our region, but quite frankly, we're not in enough schools in Central Ohio, where you guys are. And so to the extent that Rabbi Benji and Rabbi Lynette, any of your congregants listening today, have connections to school board members and superintendents, I would be honored to provide presentations to those individuals with our education team about our programs at schools and how we could benefit their school environments. And I think what's really special right now is we have a generous grant that has allowed us to underwrite our No Place for Hate program. So if any of your school districts in Ohio have a interest in No Place for Hate or any of its kind of partner programs, we have the ability not just to run the program, but to provide it free of charge right now. The other thing that we are doing is increasing the amount of trainings that we do for law enforcement, both on the hate crimes front and on extremism, so that they could better identify what is a hate crime, what qualifies as a hate crime, how do we track it appropriately. And so once again, that is an area where our office is providing those trainings to law enforcement agencies free of charge. And I'm looking forward to increasing those trainings as well. So if any of you have connections to your local police departments and are willing to put us in touch, that is another area. We just finished doing a whole set of trainings with the Kentucky State Police Force. We did a Holocaust education training with them in partnership with the National Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC, and we did it all virtually for their command staff and lieutenants, and so I would encourage police forces across Ohio that we have some tremendous trainings that I hope we could continue to spread across the region. And so, those were the key areas I really wanted to stress today. I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. I am, one of the the constant themes in my few years doing this now is that although I am confronted with these incidents and these trends of hate and anti-Semitism, I am incredibly hopeful about our ability to stop it and to reverse these trends, because every day I'm talking to community leaders and so many of you who have a vested interest in putting an end to it and working together, right? We have so many working partners in the Asian community, in the Black community, in the LGBTQ community across the state of Ohio. And there is unanimity amongst leadership in tons of nonprofit organizations across the state that we are going to create an Ohio that is better for our children and better for our grandchildren than the Ohio we are currently living in. There's not just unanimity in that thought. There are people dedicating their lives to make it happen, getting up every day, doing the work that needs to be done, the community building that needs to be done to right this ship. And all the credit in the world to so many of those people. Some of them are in elected office. Some of them are running nonprofits from Cincinnati to Columbus to Toledo. There are federation leaders that are just tremendous. I can't say enough about the federation leaders across this state. And so I just have a lot of respect for everyone on the ground putting in the hard work each and every day to ensure not just the safety of our community today, but the promise of a better world. So, and when I think of the new year, I always think of what could we do to make this world a better place, to make our communities a better place. And in that regard, even if the numbers might be daunting that I showed you earlier, in that regard, I couldn't be more confident that there's a whole bunch of us that are doing just that. And there is always more of us than there are of them. So I take solace in that. I take solace being in the company of all of you. And on that note, Rabbi, I would love to stop talking and start answering questions if people have any questions.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. I've got a couple of them that have come in on Facebook, and if you who are on Zoom, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat here, and we'll get to there. On same thing on YouTube. I'll run over there and check in. Okay, the first question is from Mindy is wondering about a question about the January 6th attack on U.S. Congress. Was this kind of categorized as a hate crime, and how is the ADL helping to prevent this from occurring again?
Listen, the insurrection on January 6th was an act of terrorism. What I always say about it is, and we saw the themes of anti-Semitism at the heart of the January 6th insurrection, right? We saw the Camp Auschwitz t-shirts. I always say, the 4-year spike of anti-Semitism, you have these bookend events where you have Charlottesville and the January 6th insurrection. And at the heart of both of those incidents, we both saw and heard the continued drumbeat of anti-Semitism. What the ADL is doing about it is, we work directly with law enforcement in identifying a great deal of individuals that were inside the Capitol building that day. that has led to many arrests across the country, quite a few here in the state of Ohio. Unfortunately, we are one of the leading states with individuals arrested inside the Capitol building on January 6th. We then also looked at which of those individuals were part of or a part of different extremist groups, so that we could see what groups were most active on January 6th and that we could follow the trends there. But we've been working directly with law enforcement in that effort. And when it comes to how do you prevent future efforts, it's once again just we will continue to work with the FBI and local law enforcement when we see things and when we hear things, both online and in our communities. We certainly provided warning of trends that we were seeing prior to January 6th, with threats of violence in the aftermath of the election. As I said earlier, that's one of the main reasons I briefed the governor of our state and all of the large city mayors. It's going to be a continued thing that we're going to have to watch out for, especially with a second planned rally in Washington, D.C. 48 hours from now on the 18th. So, it's an issue that is not going to go away, and January 6th needs to continue to be investigated.
Thanks so much, James. Thank you for joining us. And I have got a next question here from Stephen. Steve shares, what impact, if any, has the former president had on the increase of anti-Semitism? And if so, how?
Listen, I don't think that there is one person that is the cause of the increase of anti-Semitism, even if that individual wasn't helpful in stopping the spread of anti-Semitism. It is much larger than one individual, but the reality is whether it is the president of the United States or whether it is your local school board members, it is everybody's job as an elected official to call out hate and anti-Semitism whenever and wherever we see it. There can never be any equivocation. And so whether it is the highest office of the land or people in our state house, there is no room for allowing that to creep in to our political leadership. Period. End of story. So I'm not going to address the former president directly, but we have made plenty of statements over 4 to 5 years now in response to some of President Trump's former statements. And so it is certainly my hope that new political leadership across the spectrum will yield people speaking out against anti-Semitism and hate.
Thanks, James. I see Ellery has popped up on Zoom here. So Ellery, why don't you ask your question, and then we've got about 3 or 4 more of them on the other area.
Yes, I tuned in when you were showing the stats of what happened to the increase in anti-Semitism immediately after the war between Hamas and Israel. You've been able to find out which groups happened.
I lost you for a second there, Ellery. Have we been able to?
Have you been able to find out which groups have caused the huge spike in anti-Semitism to occur immediately after the war between Hamas and Israel?
Yeah. Ellery, I don't think that we've targeted that the numbers target any specific groups as much as the actions by hundreds or thousands of individuals across the country, spreading anti-Semitic tropes and statements. And like I said, a lot of kind of what you would call like the classic forms of anti-Semitism, like like you as a Jew in America, I'm going to hold you responsible for the actions of the Israeli government if I disagree with the actions of the Israeli government.
You're
And
saying that it was spontaneous.
no, I mean, I don't think it was spontaneous in the sense that it was triggered by an event that took place. But I think whenever there is a conflict, we have seen a significant uptick in anti-Semitic incidents. This past summer was no exception to that. And like I said, I think the thing we're keeping our eye on as students arrive back at college campuses this fall is whether that would also translate to a continued increase of anti-Semitism on college campuses, which we are very concerned about. So,
Is that your organization, ADL, has actually looked into?
is that anti-Semitism on college campuses?
No.
Okay.
Based on your answer to the question I asked about the increase in anti-Semitism, or the war between Hamas and Israel, there weren't groups that precipitated that, as opposed to people just sounding off?
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that if people were sounding off, it was all one-sided.
Yeah, listen.
And therefore, I'm not sure that that's the correct answer.
So, I mean, Ellery, if there are specific groups, I certainly don't mind getting back to you directly. I could get your contact information from Rabbi Benji and send you any information that we do have. But I could talk to our kind of center on extremism on the ground to see if there are any groups specifically that where we were tracking information coming from.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking, has the ADL that there are specific groups causing that extreme amount of anti-Semitism after that event?
Yeah.
So has ADL looked into it?
So I'm not aware of any specific groups, but like I said, I will certainly get back to you.
I'd appreciate that.
No problem, Ellery.
We've got a couple of more questions that have come in here. Here's one from Hilda, and I see Marcio has got one in here. Hilda says, all of those communities when you mention are active, but when I hear reports of their activities, they are about the individual groups and do not include us. How do we get anti-Semitism on the agenda? I don't remember which part of the presentation this question was based on, but I guess maybe the last question is the last sentence is the most important there. How do we get anti-Semitism on the agenda if we want to work in our communities?
So to me, it's about coalition building, right? Which is why I have spent a good amount of time in my work making sure that I am creating relationships not just in the Jewish world, but in the non-Jewish world. And I work very closely with the NAACP chapters in Cincinnati and in Cleveland and the statewide conference chapters. And I think the answer to the question is how do we get other organizations that are non-Jewish to also fight back against anti-Semitism? The answer to that is to work with them. Right, and I can tell you that we are working every day, and my ADL board in our region is diverse, and the organizations we work with are extraordinarily diverse, and I can tell you that many of them share our mission, and those individuals and leaders do not want to see a spread of anti-Semitism in this state or anywhere else, and they're going to work with us. So, as I kind of said when I was talking, what kind of gives me a lot of confidence in the work that we're doing is the broad cross-section of human beings that have been partners in fighting back against anti-Semitism when there have been incidents in their communities. So.
Thanks. Thanks for that. Just a couple of other short ones, and I know maybe there are a couple others here. Well, one's kind of a comment, but a question from Phil is wondering, what's the current status of the BDS movement?
I mean, the current status is that the BDS movement has continued to, in some environments, grow. As I was talking to earlier with in response to Ellery's question, one of the things we're looking at is anti-Semitism on college campuses. And obviously the growth of the BDS movement on college campuses is an area of concern that we are working on. We've formed partnerships with Hillels across the state to figure out how we could help. And whether that is talking to both Jewish and non-Jewish students alike, giving the tools that Jewish students need to respond to what they're seeing on campus, and also to inform the non-Jewish students. But yeah, the growth of BDS is certainly something that we are aware of and cognizant of, and we are going to work hard whenever we do see it pop up with different community partners to oppose the spread of BDS.
Thanks, James. This next question comes from Marcio. Let me get over there. Great. Okay. He asks, with the spike, are we seeing an increase in awareness and engagement of non-minorities in fighting against hate? If not, can we keep track of it and see what has worked to engage more people to accept others?
So if we've seen people in non-minority groups kind of join our fight. I think sometimes, unfortunately, like we tend to be more of a reactive than a proactive society. And I think sometimes where we see the most community gathering, community response to something is after something happens, and you'll see community rally behind a cause. And so, throughout my time at ADL, in response to whether it's a school-based incident or an incident that occurred, in some public forum in a community, you'll start seeing people in the community, minority and non-minority alike, join hands and come together. We obviously need to get to a place where we don't rely on being a reactive society. A lot of times that's what we see is communities coming together kind of after the fact.
James, on behalf of all of us at TBS, we want to give you a huge thank you for spending this hour with us. And I think all of us have a daunting task in front of us, and we, if we can have the courage to call out anti-Semitism where we see it, and to be able to to also work through education and to talk to people who are different than us, to get to know them. I think that we can make a real difference. And if folks would like to the scenarios that James shared earlier today, if you maybe just send me an email, and I'll kind of create a list, and then James, I can get them from you at some point.
Great.
And we really appreciate it. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rabbi. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah. Maybe next year there'll be a dramatic decrease in anti-Semitism, and we'll have you to celebrate that on Yom Kippur. Horrible number we saw from this summer.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right, everyone. Just a quick program note here in a half an hour at 4 o'clock. We have a healing service beginning outside in the parking lot. We'll be streaming that as well. And then 4:45 Yisker, 5:45-ish is Nila. So a lot more to come. This is the day that doesn't quit. Yom Kippur, keep on plugging along. But James, we're really, really appreciative of the time. So have a great rest of your day and an easy rest of your fast.
Thank you. Have a meaningful fast, everybody. Thank you and take care.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.